The blue and red lights flickered across the cabin's wooden walls, casting long, restless shadows that danced in the early morning dark. I stood on the porch, mug of coffee in hand, watching two officers approach while a woman in her 50s hovered behind them, arms crossed in smug satisfaction. Her beige pantsuit screamed middle management, and her perfectly styled bob bounced sharply with each emphatic motion she made toward my home. "That's him, officers, the trespasser! I told you he broke in last night," she announced, her voice slicing through the quiet. "This property's been empty for months, and suddenly this man appears claiming ownership. I'm the HOA president of Pine Ridge Estates, and I know every single homeowner here." The lead officer, tall with gray streaks at his temples, approached me carefully. "Sir, we received a report of a possible burglary in progress. May I see some identification?" I reached into my wallet and handed him my driver's license, along with another card tucked just behind it. His partner swept a flashlight along the porch rail, searching for any sign of forced entry that, of course, wasn't there. The officer studied my license, then paused when he saw the second card. His eyes flicked up at me, widened slightly, and then shifted toward the woman, who was now tapping her foot with theatrical impatience. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "do you know who this man is?" Her smug grin faltered. "I don't care who he says he is. He's on HOA property without permission." The officer's tone changed immediately. "Ma'am, this is Daniel Morrison, Senior Compliance Officer for the State Real Estate Commission." Her face drained of color in an instant. It had all started just 3 days earlier. My mother had called to tell me that Uncle Robert had passed away. Amid the grief came the unexpected news that he'd left me his lake cabin in Pine Ridge Estates. I'd only visited once as a teenager nearly 20 years ago, but the memory had lingered. Quiet, pine-scented summers by the water. The estate attorney sent me the deed and keys, confirming everything was current and legal. After months of dealing with endless property disputes in the city, I decided to take a break and spend a night at the cabin. It was supposed to be peaceful, a way to remember my uncle and escape the bureaucratic chaos of my job. The 3-hour drive through twisting mountain roads felt almost cleansing, and I arrived just as the sun slipped behind the trees. The cabin was exactly as I remembered. Small, warm, with knotty pine walls and a stone fireplace that still carried the faint scent of old smoke. I unpacked some essentials, lit a fire, and sat down with a book and a glass of wine. By 10 I was asleep, lulled by the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the soft ripple of the lake. Then came the pounding. Not a polite knock, but an angry, relentless banging that dragged me from sleep around 7 a.m. Groggy, still half-dressed from the night before, I opened the door to find a woman glaring at me like I'd committed a crime against her personally. Clipboard in hand, she demanded, "Who are you and what are you doing in this property?" Blinking the sleep from my eyes, I said, "Daniel Morrison, this is my cabin. I inherited it from my uncle." "And you are?" She huffed. "Linda Garrison, president of the Pine Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. And I can assure you no one authorized any new occupants here. This cabin's been empty since Robert Morrison passed. Any new resident requires HOA approval, transfer fees, and a background check." "I literally own the property," I said, rubbing my temples. "I have the deed and the keys. My uncle left it to me in his will." "That's not how it works here, mister," she snapped, waving her clipboard like a weapon. "We have strict covenants in Pine Ridge Estates. You can't just show up and claim a residence. Have you filled out your HOA application? Paid the $500 transfer fee? What about the orientation packet?" Leaning against the doorframe, I sighed. "Listen, Linda, I respect the rules, but I'm not a new resident. I'm the owner. I'm just here for one night. I don't need approval to stay in my own home." Her face flushed crimson. "How dare you take that tone? I've been HOA president for 12 years, and I won't be disrespected by some outsider who thinks he can ignore our regulations." "I'm not ignoring them," I replied evenly. "I'm exercising my rights. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need coffee." I began to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the way. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll hear from our HOA attorney. And if you're still here tonight, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." She stormed down the gravel path, and I made a mental note to review the HOA bylaws later. I'd dealt with plenty of power-hungry board members before, but Linda Garrison seemed to be an entire case study. The rest of the day passed quietly. I sorted through my uncle's things, took the kayak out for a while, and even met a few neighbors who offered condolences and a warm welcome. None mentioned HOA approval, but when I brought up my morning visitor, they all shared the same look. "Oh, you met Linda," said Tom from 2 cabins down with a laugh. "Yeah, she's thorough." Tom laughed and shook his head. "She once tried to fine me for using the wrong shade of brown on my deck stain. I had to show her the approved color chart, with the paint can in hand, before she finally backed down." That evening, I grilled burgers on the deck, watching the sunset spread orange and violet streaks across the lake. It was shaping up to be another calm night until 2 pairs of headlights appeared at the end of my drive. The police cars rolled to a stop beside my cabin, and I stepped out to meet them, still holding my coffee mug from dinner. Which brought us once again to this moment, Linda Garrison's confident smirk evaporating as the officers read my name and title. The lead officer returned my ID, his tone firm but measured. "Ma'am, could you explain exactly what crime you're reporting here?" Linda blinked, taken aback. "He's trespassing! This property requires HOA approval for occupancy, and he doesn't have it." "But he owns the property," the officer said slowly, like explaining something to a stubborn child. "You can't trespass on your own land. The HOA has rules." She shot back, her pitch rising. "He hasn't paid fees, filled out forms, or—" "Those are civil issues, ma'am, not criminal," interrupted the second officer. "You called 911 to report a burglary." "That's a serious accusation." I decided to step in. "Officers, I can show you the deed and estate paperwork if it'll help clear this up. Everything's properly filed with the county, and taxes are current." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Morrison," said the lead officer. "We know who you are. My captain actually attended your seminar on property law compliance last spring." He turned back to Linda. "Ma'am, you do realize that filing a false police report is a crime?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping for air. "I didn't file a false report. He's not supposed to be here without HOA authorization." "But he's not committing a crime," the officer said evenly. "He owns the home. HOA disputes aren't police matters unless there's real criminal activity." I watched as the truth finally hit her. Linda Garrison, queen of HOA enforcement, had just reported a state compliance officer for burglary. "Officers," I said calmly, "thank you for coming. I'd like to file a formal complaint about this. I was woken in my own home by a false report. This is the second time today Ms. Garrison has harassed me." The officer nodded, pulling out a small notebook. "We'll need statements from both of you. Mr. Morrison, would you like to press charges for the false report?" Linda's face turned ghost white. "You can't be serious. I'm the HOA president. I was protecting our community from its legal property owners?" I asked dryly. The next hour passed with statements, signatures, and frantic phone calls. Linda rang her husband, someone she called our HOA attorney, and half the board. Each conversation grew more desperate as she realized how badly she'd overplayed her hand. When the officers finished, the lead one handed me his card. "If you need anything for your complaint, let us know. We take false reports seriously, especially when they're used to harass homeowners." He turned to Linda with a warning glare. "Ma'am, I suggest you study property law before dialing 911 again." After the police left, Linda lingered in my driveway, looking smaller than before. "You won't really file a complaint, will you?" she asked weakly. "I was just doing my job." "Your job," I said evenly, "is to handle legitimate HOA matters, not harass residents or waste police resources. I'll be reviewing your bylaws closely." "You should, too." The next morning, I filed the formal complaint before heading back to the city. But that was only the beginning. At my office, I pulled Pine Ridge Estate's file. What I found was staggering. Years of homeowner complaints, excessive fines, and improperly noticed board meetings. Linda's little empire had left a trail of violations a mile long. Within a week, I scheduled a full audit of Pine Ridge Estates. State law required HOAs to maintain transparency, hold lawful elections, and respect property rights. Pine Ridge failed on nearly every front. The audit confirmed everything: missing financials, improper votes, and a culture of intimidation. The State Real Estate Commission issued a formal notice of violation and demanded immediate reforms. 3 weeks later came the emergency HOA meeting. Word had spread about Linda's false report and the state's involvement. Residents who'd suffered under her micromanagement for years finally spoke out. The vote to remove her from office was unanimous, except for hers. I attended both as a homeowner and as the official overseeing compliance. Watching Linda clutch the gavel while the secretary read the tally was almost surreal. Her 12-year reign ended not with authority, but with disbelief. "This is illegal," she shouted. "You can't do this. I've given my life to this community." "The vote's been counted, Linda," said Tom, the neighbor she once targeted over deck stain. "It's time to step down." Security had to escort her out as she ranted. The last image I have is her standing in the parking lot, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, powerless without her title. Her false report earned her a $5,000 fine and 200 hours of community service. The HOA's insurer refused to cover her legal fees, and rumor had it she'd taken a second mortgage just to pay her attorney. 6 months later, I was appointed to draft new statewide HOA regulations. The reforms, unofficially dubbed the Morrison Protocols, established strict checks on board authority and expanded protections for homeowners. Ironically, Linda Garrison's vendetta had sparked positive change for thousands. These days, when I visit the cabin, I still see her walking her Pomeranian past my driveway. She doesn't make eye contact, doesn't wave, and certainly doesn't mention HOA business. Tom, now the new HOA president, runs things sensibly, focusing on real community improvements instead of ego trips. Last week, I received a notice for the annual compliance review. As the state official assigned to oversee Pine Ridge Estates, I'll be the one ensuring they follow every rule. The irony isn't lost on me, or on Linda, who I'm told turns pale whenever my name comes up. I sleep soundly in that cabin now, knowing the woman who once called the cops on me for being in my own home lives in quiet dread of her next compliance review. The $5,000 fine might have stung, but the look on her face every time she remembers I'm the one auditing her, that's priceless.